The views expressed in this program do not necessarily reflect those of this station.
Welcome to Insights into Northeast Michigan, a WBKB News public affairs program. Insights deals with the issues affecting those in the community as well as Northeast Michigan and the state. And now, Insights into Northeast Michigan.
Hello everyone, I'm Star Connor and welcome to another episode of Insights. Today I have with me Mr. Kruger at the Behavioral Health Services here in Mid-Michigan Medical Center. And I wanted to talk to you, with this month being Suicidal Awareness Month and things like that, about mental health illness and some things you have here going on. Now, I wanted to ask you, how is mental health affecting our area currently?
Sure. So in general, mental health it's not affecting like our area specifically. In general, it affects everyone. It affects, but it specifically affects us in the way of us being so rural that we are unable to get qualified professionals to the area, such as therapists or psychiatrists. So there's a shortage of the qualified professionals.
And why do you see that as a shortage? I know you were saying your wife was moving to a different facility. Sure. Could it be that, or just the lack of applications, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, it'd be the lack of applications, people wanting to live in a bigger city, people wanting, that's what we primarily see. Yeah.
Okay, now with mental health going on right now, how many patients would you say you see coming in and out here?
Sure. Me specifically, I have a caseload of approximately 50 to 60 individuals that I provide outpatient therapy for. And I would typically see the patients every 2 weeks, depending on the need or depending on the patient's request. Our clinic, in general, though, we serve about 800 patients a year.
Now, with the lack of, of course, like social workers on hand and stuff like that,
Sure.
I know that plays a difficulty. So will you be taking on more patients?
Yes, as a staff chooses to leave or find another position, that we would end up absorbing those individuals until we are able to hire another therapist.
Okay. Working with that, I know it can be a little bit stressful for you,
Sure.
but I know for a patient, stress levels and things like that play a major role in anxiety, different
Absolutely.
types. So what are some types of, mental health problems or issues that you have coming in and out here?
Sure. So you're looking for like the specific,
the signs,
the signs, symptoms, the disorders that we treat. We treat a lot of people that have depression, and which depression, it's having that feeling of sadness, that overwhelming feeling of sadness. It's having maybe a decrease in your appetite, or it could be an increase in your appetite due to wanting to alleviate that feeling of sadness through food, or not feeling like you can eat at all. Depression can also manifest by like a feeling of tiredness, just not feeling interested in things that you used to be interested in. Sometimes sleeping too much, or sleeping not enough. Sometimes it can be hard for patients to turn their mind off, and they're not sleeping enough. We also treat anxiety, which is an overwhelming feeling of like worry or stress, and that typically people will have some physical symptoms with that, such as like a tightness in their chest, their back, neck, like a tense feeling. People will also, anxiety can also affect your appetite and sleep, just as it does with depression. But the biggest difference is that overwhelming sense of worry. with anxiety. We also treat disorders such as bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Bipolar is it does have some similar symptoms as depression. The biggest difference, though, is the manic symptoms that a person would experience with bipolar disorder. And what I mean by mania is that an individual will start to feel like they're on top of the world, like grandiose feeling. Their judgment will just get very impaired, such as an increase in gambling or things along those lines. With schizophrenia, that is a disorder where patients will start to experience beliefs that can be proven to not be real, which would be considered a type of delusion. Patients can start to experience hallucinations, feeling like someone's talking to them, and it being specifically like they're right there in the room with them, or they're hearing the sound come from another room. They could also experience visual hallucinations, feeling like someone's in the room with them or standing next to them, and those types of symptoms. They can also experience, and with an individual with schizophrenia, their affect, the way they present their emotions can be significantly different than someone without schizophrenia as well. For instance, if they're happy, they would have a hard time showing that feeling, and if they're sad, they may feel sad, but they may act the opposite.
Right.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So, but those are some of the common disorders that we treat. Yeah.
Now, I noticed, like, living here, 8 months of snow can really affect you.
Absolutely.
Especially coming from somewhere that doesn't even have snow, but like probably once a week.
Sure.
Now, does seasons play a role into depression, anxiety, and
Sure.
things
Absolutely,
like
it
that?
does. It plays a huge factor. We actually have a specific disorder that we identify as seasonal affective disorder, and what that is it is a disorder that comes and goes with the seasons. You'll typically experience depression, and it will typically begin in late fall, early winter, and then will subside during like early spring or summer. And it's mainly it's a lot the same as depression, but experiencing it just during that time of year.
Mm-hmm. Now, what inspired you to, want to take on this field of work?
Sure. So it was my interest in wanting to help other people. It was the biggest thing. My mom had an adult foster care for individuals with developmental disabilities growing up, and so that really inspired me to want to work with and provide services to individuals that have a mental health disorder.
Okay, and I know that we have a new facility, and we're going to take a little tour of that.
Sure.
Now, was that facility brought on because we are seeing an increase sort of kind of with patients, or?
Yeah, I mean, our facility has been here for many years. We are wanting to make sure the community is aware of it and bringing more awareness to it. It was started because there was a recognized need, and because of the knowing that not all persons can be served through community mental health, and wanting to have other options for individuals.
Okay, and is mental health an illness or disease?
I would consider it more of a disorder, and the reason I say that is because we focus on mental health is revolved around a combination of things. It's revolved around the person's their psychological and their mind. It revolves around their what's going on in their environment, and it also revolves around their biology. So that's what would consider it more of a disorder. That's why I would consider it more of a disorder.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Mr. Kruger. And we're going to take a tour of the outpatient facility when we return. Welcome back to Insights. I'm Star Connor, and I'm still here with Mr. Kruger, and we are going to take a little tour of the outpatient area here at the Behavioral Health Services area, correct?
Yeah, correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is where we provide services for outpatient therapy, and then also for psychiatry, medication reviews, things along those lines.
What's some of the different areas here? I see like a therapist room or a room like a patient might go into. Just explain some of the areas that you need people to fill or, you know, come and work here at.
Sure. So the base, there's always a shortage of psychiatrists. That's all over Michigan, not just our smaller community. It's all over Michigan. We use a lot of telepsychiatry, which means we have psychiatrists that are from downstate or from other states around the U.S. Our full-time psychiatrist for our inpatient unit actually lives in South Carolina, and then he sees the patients daily using a video system.
So we're actually about to step into a unique room. What is it called again?
It's called a telepsychiatry room, and this is where our patients can see a psychiatrist that is over a video system, such as FaceTime or Skype type system. But we have a system that we use that is HIPAA compliant. The psychiatrist will spend 20 to 30 minutes with the patient, getting to know them. Well, the first initial session will be a little bit longer, hopefully right around 30 to 45 minutes, and then where they just get to know one another, and the doctor gets to know their disorder, and then for medication reviews, the doctor will spend 15 to 20 minutes with the patient, seeing if there's any type of side effects or if their symptoms are persisting.
Okay, so with telepsychiatry, I'm the patient, and I would be looking at my doctor here on the screen.
Yes, you would be the small screen, and then our Dr. Parker would be on the larger in the background.
Okay, and why do you have to have this again? Because there's a lack of doctors in our area to see?
We have, due to our small community, we do have, and the lack of psychiatrists, we are able to offer psychiatry via the telemedicine, which is an iPad that the doctor can be from wherever he's at, whether it be Michigan or another state, and then see patients for us. And this allows patients to have telepsychiatry locally instead of having to travel 2 or 3 hours to see a psychiatrist. We have what's called a Polycom, and it's basically it's a video chat system that we utilize for.
This is the courtroom, the conference courtroom.
Yeah, we use it for court, which allows us to have the patients on our inpatient setting be able to attend mental health hearings.
And what do you do in a mental health hearing?
So mental health hearing, they are determining whether or not the patient continues to need mental health treatment. We do treat patients that sometimes feel like they don't need mental health treatment, but the doctor and the staff is telling them, yes, you do need treatment. And so the doctor can't make that necessarily decision on his own. We need that to come from a judge as well. Okay. So so this room allows us to be able to have the court hearing with courts all around Michigan, whatever county the patient's from. Because with our inpatient unit, we serve patients all over the state of Michigan.
mental health doesn't only affect an adult, it can affect children too as well.
Correct.
And I know you actually have a room built on for kids.
Yes, correct. The room that we have designated is a play therapy room, and that allows us to have children express themselves with the use of toys. And because a lot of times we serve children that may not be able to express their feelings like you and I do with talking, or like adults can with talking. So we have them express themselves through toys or through painting, drawing, things along those lines.
So in this room, this area, children come in and just talk about their feelings, or do they have them wait while their parents are getting, help, or
Sure.
how does it work?
We would love to be able to offer that service of the child being able to wait while the parent is here. We don't have that service currently, so what we use this room for is we use it to work with the children to express their feelings, and to we also use it for teaching social skills and things along those lines as well.
Okay, because I noticed right here, this says I'm feeling happy.
Yeah. There's all different types of feelings in that book. They can express themselves by using those pages. We will use the games to kind of teach the children ways of interacting with others. We will use the paints for them to make drawings of like their family, or drawings of a social interaction that they recently experienced. And then we also use the painting and the crafts as ways of teaching them to cope with the feeling that they're having, because we know arts, crafts, games can be good coping skills for depression and anxiety. It gives them, it distracts their mind from what might be happening in that moment.
Now, I noticed you have like a big dollhouse, and of course, me being a girl, you just look at that as a dollhouse or like a toy, but that's probably used for a child to show like what's going on currently at their home.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. We can use that for them to show what's going on in their home. We can use it to model appropriate interactions with parents, with peers, things like that. Yep.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kruger, for the tour.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
All right, and we'll be back with more insights. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Insights. I'm Star Connor, and in part 3, some of y'all may know Jackie Krawcheck here at the Chamber on a work level, but how many of you actually know her on a personal level? Jackie, I want to thank you, first of all, for opening up and talking about mental illness. Now, how have you dealt with that in your life?
Well, there's quite a history of mental health issues in my past. So I think, and a lot of people already know this because I am very open about these issues, but several years ago, probably about 20 years ago, I was diagnosed with 2 different things. One was severe clinical depression, and the other was an eating disorder. So the depression, there's different types of depression, and some can happen after just a particular instance. So something traumatic happens, or a death in the family, say, and you're depressed for a period of time, and then you get better and you move on. Other depression, which was what I was diagnosed with, is an ongoing depression that's not related to any specific instance. So I had it for a lot of years, and it just kept progressively getting worse. So I went in to get help for that, and also was diagnosed with my eating disorder of bulimia, so binging and purging. And I had that for probably about 15 or so years before I really was in recovery from that.
Now, how did you feel going through that? Like, what were your resources and people that you would go to reach out, and you finally went and said, I need help?
Well, it's a really hard thing to do because mental health is so stigmatized. And so think about if you broke your arm or your leg, I could say, Star, what happened? How'd you break your arm? And you'd tell me about it. Or if you had to take off work because you had to go get a cast on your arm, it's fine and everyone accepts it. But mental health is different. So if I came into work and I said, I need a mental health day, well, you can't see it. People don't understand it because they can't see it. If they've never dealt with it, they don't really know what that means. So it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. And then the eating disorder side of it, when you're doing it that it's wrong, but it does something for you, much like an addiction. And so you keep doing it, but it's such a secret thing, and there's a lot of shame and guilt. So making that call and saying that you need help is very challenging. I had asked for help I think 2 or 3 times before I actually stuck with it. Once in college, once when I had moved back to Alpena, and then again after that when I was still in Alpena. And it just takes a certain place where you're at mentally where you have to get help, or your only other option is to not exist anymore. I think that's the point that people get to, and you just think, I can't live this way anymore. Like, I can't live with this sadness or this, shame and guilt that I feel all the time.
Now, how do you think it happened to you? What was going on in your life? Do you remember at that time to make you feel that you had to, go through stages of life of having an eating disorder or, just feeling depressed and things? What were going on in your life at that time?
That's something that I may never know the answer to. And that's something, honestly, that I had to come to terms with, that I may never know what kind of led me to that point. There's probably a lot of combination of factors. I had a great childhood. I had great friends and family, and we went on all kinds of vacations, and I was a good student. So how can somebody, and that's where a lot of that guilt comes from, is how can someone with such a good life have depression? And so you feel that, almost just that shame and sort of like you're shallow or something because that's how you feel, but you just can't help feeling that way. So there really isn't anything that I can pinpoint, or that in years of therapy we've been able to identify that lead to it, but I've come to terms with that, and it's okay not knowing because there may not be one instance. It may have just been the way my brain was wired, the way that I learned to deal with things, unhealthy, keeping it to myself, not talking about things, and it's just the way that I learned to treat myself.
Mm-hmm. Now, on your road to recovery, battling those two issues, because I want to talk about some other things too, how was your road to recovery with that?
So when I finally decided to get serious about accepting help, making that final phone call to a therapist, and then actually allowing myself to take medication, because I was so opposed to taking an antidepressant for so long. I felt weak having to do that, or, people like me, I didn't have to do that, but I really did, and it was very helpful. So what I learned, there's certain things I learned in that journey, and it wasn't, it took me X number of years to get that way. It was kind of building up over time. So it was going to take a lot of years to undo that as well. So what I learned in the journey of recovery, the tools that I learned are things that I've been able to use in other instances. So I do a lot of talking now about resilience, and those are the things that I really hold on to tight now. And it's things like maintain a positive attitude, always look for the silver lining, choose action, choose the lesson to embrace the lesson in every experience. So every experience that you have includes a lesson. I talk to a lot of students, and I'll tell them, if you fail a test, it's not good, and you're mad at yourself, and you may blame whatever you're going to blame, but there's really a lesson in that. So what can you do differently the next time? How can you get a better grade the next time? So always embrace the lesson and appreciate that you had the opportunity to learn that lesson. So I have all of these tools now. Oh, and the biggest one I think for me that I had to work really hard at was talking more to my network of support. And I would always feel like a burden to them. So if I were to call you and say, Star, I'm having a bad day, I feel like I'm in a spiral and I'm going to throw up tonight, I would feel like I'm burdening you and your time. So I wouldn't tell anybody that was happening. Instead, I would just internalize it and spiral out of control. So I really had to learn to accept the care that other people gave me and let them care about me and talk more and not less. So all of those things helped me get through and get into recovery. But now I can use those tools to handle other things that come my way.
Right, and some things did come your way. We were just discussing, the recent death of your sister due to a drunk driver, and your father being an alcoholic. How did you deal with all that? And your sister died this summer, so how did you deal with all that?
Yeah, so it was just about 3 months ago that my sister was killed by a drunk driver, and it's not something that I would ever wish for anybody to have to go through. But looking back and embracing the lessons from the experience of the eating disorder and depression, and maintaining the positive attitude and looking at it in a way where I'm not dwelling on things that don't impact me. Like, don't look at don't ask questions like, why did it have to be her? Why didn't they stop for gas first? Why didn't they, go faster or slower? Whatever it is, could they avoided it? That stuff doesn't matter. So it's really only focusing on the things that I can have an impact on, and those things are the way that I respond to stuff and the way that I feel about things and the way that I can be there for other people. So, and I'm also very grateful that I had already learned how to allow people to care for me, because in that instance, I needed people there all the time. So I used those tools to get through that, and then to also be there for my family who also needed, I'm not the only one that lost somebody in that instance. And then also having a parent that was an alcoholic and is now thankfully in recovery for several years, getting through that as well. It's using those same things, like what's the silver lining? I'm so glad that he never hurt himself or someone else. I'm so glad that he found the recovery system that he did. So it's just using those tools I learned through my experience of mental health and applying them to everything else.
Well, I noticed something on your hand. It says strength.
Yes.
And, you just got to have strength in time of need like this. And is this something you wear as a reminder to, continue to build your strength? Or?
It is, yep. So I was telling you I have a tattoo as well for strength and resilience, because it's something that people keep telling me, like, you're such a strong person, all these things have happened. I don't feel like a strong person. I just feel like I'm doing what I need to do to be a happy, resilient, effective person, contributing to society. And so I do wear this to remind me that, yes, I am strong, and then also to remind me of all of those things I've learned to help me continue to get through life healthy.
Right. So my last question to you in closing, for the people out there still dealing with their issues and their mental health issues and just personal issues and things like that, what's something that you want to say to them to, encourage them to get the help they need?
Yeah, so that's actually the reason why I'm so willing to be an open book about all of this, is because I know how I felt for so long, and it literally breaks my heart to know that there's other people, a lot of other people, that feel that way, that aren't comfortable talking about it, that may never reach out for help. And there is hope. There's always recovery. I mean, you just have to ask for it, you have to find it, and you have to be willing to accept it. So I don't want anyone else to have to feel the way that I felt. So reach out, reach out to me. I'll help connect you with somebody. Reach out to people that care about you, but always know that there is hope.
All right. Well, thank you so much for, opening up your door of life and your personal battle with mental illness and mental health. And I just want to thank you for opening up that to everyone.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. And I want to thank everyone for watching this episode of Insights. Until next week, I'm your host, Star Connor.
Insights into Northeast Michigan is produced by WBKB News. If you have any comments, suggestions, or topics you would like to see on a future show, please email WBKB News. This has been a production of Thunder Bay Broadcasting Corporation. All rights reserved.